everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we'll be discussing about a new dark extra turn attacker, and this monster is from the Mythic category, so we can expect some very crazy traits and very crazy stats from this monster as well. So yeah, looking forward to that. So we have the moveset in front of us. We'll be going over the moves one by one and I'll give you my thoughts at the very end. So the first move is Singing in the Night, deals low dark damage to one enemy, applies bleed to one enemy. I kind of do not like this skill simply because it does low dark damage, and even if this monster has a high power stat, that won't deal much damage. What I do like about this move, however, it applies a DOT that is bleeding and that will deal damage over time as well. So yeah. Moving on, we have a hero in my way that deals low dark damage to all enemies. Now this is an AoE and I wouldn't recommend running this because we have better moves that will deal more damage in this monster, so yeah, not worth it. Then we have Cutting Feather, deals low special damage to one enemy, gives one extra turn to itself, requires cooldown. Now this is the skill that you might be looking for. Now I generally would not recommend running any of the extra turn skills, but since this monster is marketed as an extra turn attacker, I will be recommending those skills with extra turns simply because this monster is marketed that way. And you know, one thing that I'm really scared of is this monster will somehow counter the anticipation trait, which was used to shut down the Voltic armies, the Xyla armies. The extra turn attackers basically were all shut down once anticipation was introduced. So yeah, that remains to be seen, and if this monster somehow manages to counter anticipation, you can expect this to be the new Voltic, the new Xyla. So yeah, scared about that. Then we have Body Acceleration, removes all negative status effects from itself, applies stamina regeneration to itself. Now this is also a good move since it removes negative effects from itself and can be very useful in certain situations like clearing a lot of DOTs, especially DOTs like Curse that deal increased damage over time. And also it applies stamina regeneration, so you could use extra stamina regeneration to do those extra turn skills again and again. Now this extra turn skill may or may not have a specific cooldown to basically form a synergy with other extra turn skills. That remains to be seen since the skill sheet is not with us and we do not have the stats or the trait. We're just going on assumptions here. We just have the moveset. I am just reading and telling you guys what I think would be the case, and if that's the case, what is the best scenario to run these moves in. Moving on to skill number 5, we have Your Worst Nightmare, deals low dark damage to all enemies, applies nightmares to all enemies, requires cooldown. Now another AoE skill that applies nightmares. I like this skill even if it does low dark damage. The nightmares will do additional damage to each monster over time, so yeah. Your Worst Nightmare, kind of mediocre skill, but I still like it. Then we have Twilight Wings, deals moderate special damage to one enemy, gives one extra turn to itself, requires cooldown. Now another extra turn skill. Now what I have noticed from reading these skills beforehand is this monster just only has 2 extra turn skills, so if this monster even manages to counter anticipation, this monster would not be able to continue on this cycle with extra turns, simply because even if anticipation is countered by this monster won't be able to perform extra turn upon extra turn, simply because the cooldowns will be a little too much for this monster to handle, much like the extra turn monsters we have today that are usable. So then we have X Scratch, deals moderate dark damage to all enemies, requires cooldown. So yeah, this is just a moderate dark damage. I personally would prefer running this over Your Worst Nightmare, even if it has no DOT, simply because it deals an additional attack and you will be combining this in conjunction with the extra turn skill. So I'm thinking that this will be enough to knock out the enemy monsters team, considering the fact that Mythic monsters have a very high power stat and you could just equip this monster with strength runes and run with it. Then we have Dream with Freddy, deals heavy dark damage to one enemy, applies nightmares to one enemy. Yeah, another single hit move that can be used to KO monsters. Then we have the special Moon Jump that deals heavy physical damage to all enemies and applies stun to all enemies. Nothing too special about the special. It just deals damage and stun that has a very low chance of triggering, so yeah. Now the moves that I would recommend are obviously X Scratch and the 2 extra turn skills, which is Twilight Wings and Cutting Feather. And then you could either run Body Acceleration that will clear all the negative effects, or Your Worst Nightmare to apply DOTs to the entire enemy team. This is a very simple monster with mediocre skills. Now this monster could be very well be the best mythic monster out there, simply if it has a trait that counters any and everything, especially anticipation, or it has crazy high stats. So that remains to be seen. Now for the latest updates, etc., you can just click on the subscribe button and be the first to check out any news that is released about this monster. You can be sure that I'll bring those news to you as soon as possible. So yeah,